So first of all, the propaganda is getting tiresome. Trump has done a brilliant job. You can't find one thing to criticize him over. And, and Joe Biden had destroyed the economy. It was record low unemployment. So you're being preposterous. No one believes you.
Cenk Uygur was a guest on Piers Morgan show, Piers Morgan Uncensored, to go up against a panel that included MAGA stooge Tim Pool and his beanie, author Batya Ungar-Sargon, MAGA lunatic Kari Lake, and Representative Shri Tandahar. So we're going to take a look at these clips of Cenk Uygur and the others on Piers Morgan show. I'm going to share my thoughts on this as well. Let's get into it together.
When you look at the corporate press, the principal institutions, ABC, et cetera, he's down in the double digits. However, if you go back to the start of his second term, you can see that the polls completely disagree with each other in ridiculous ways. One day he's up 10. The next day, a new polling agency says he's down 10. The only thing you really need to track is a singular poll's movement over time. And we are seeing a minor decline. That is likely due to 401ks dropping, people being concerned about this. Does this rise to the level of impeachment? No. I think you're doing this largely because you want to get your name out there, because the Democrats have no front runner. No one knows who's in charge of the party. So everyone's clawing to the top of the crabs in a barrel to try and be the pick me for 2028.
All right, Congressman, you're just doing this because you're a narcissist, basically.
Well, look, in the first 100 days, his numbers are lower than any other president. You had to go back 70 years. And the only other bad numbers for a president in the first 100 days was Trump 45. So people have spoken.
Is that why you're doing it?
People are having a buyer's remorse. People are, I've spoken to many of Trump's supporters, and they are hugely disappointed by his actions, by his failure to fix the economy. That's number one on people's minds.
Okay, Kari, what's your response to the congressman? Because there are lots of people saying this, and the Democrats have got their gander up a bit now. They're beginning to marshal their so-called resistance in a better way, because Trump's giving them a lot of opportunity to do that. At what point politically do you start feeling twitchy if the tariff war doesn't work how Trump intends it to?
First of all, where did this guy come from? No, with all due respect, this is an idiotic thing to do. And it's proving that the Democrat Party has no play. They don't know what to do right now because Trump is winning on everything. He's strategizing how to fix the economy that Joe Biden drove not only into a ditch, but off a cliff. And this is why the American people were suffering. And it sounds to me like this is a political move to try to put him in good graces with the AOC crowd and the very, very far left radical crowd ahead of another election. This is ridiculous. The American people were sick of the previous attempts of impeaching President Trump before. They don't want to see this again. And I'm embarrassed for this gentleman. I'm embarrassed for that congressman that he's doing that he's fallen to that level to try to impeach President Trump in his first 100 days as he tries to save us from the serious missteps of Joe Biden and that administration that almost broke the backs of every American in this country. What about the fentanyl that's no longer pouring across the border? What about the lives that are saved there? What about a president who's trying to end a war that's killing thousands, tens of thousands of people and costing all kinds of our treasure over in Ukraine? What about that? No, he's trying to concentrate on something to make people all of a sudden know who he is so that he can raise money and run for re-election. I find it despicable. I really do.
Congressman, you're despicable.
Well, that's just what...
No, the action is despicable. I don't know this congressman. I find his actions despicable and political. Rather than going to work every day and fighting for the American people in his district, he's trying to thwart President Trump as President Trump works very hard to try to save this country and get us on the right track.
Okay, Congressman, you're doing despicable things.
Well, look, he has failed on economy, our relationship with our allies.
He's not failed on the economy.
Unimpeachable.
Look, he said I understand, but on day one, he said he's going to fix Ukraine war. He hasn't done that in 100 days. Nothing that he said he's going to do he has done. And, economy is in terrible shape. His tariffs are totally unproductive. And auto industry, I represent Detroit, Michigan. The auto industry is hurting. Auto workers are losing their jobs. Auto factories in America are closing. Look, this he hasn't thought this through. When you impose tariffs, you gotta be ready to have manufacturing happening in America. I agree that more manufacturing needs to happen in America, but it doesn't happen just because he raises tariffs on foreign countries. You need to invest in manufacturing. This is a process that takes tens of years to get this done.
Okay, let me bring in. All right, let me bring in.
Is this Congressman out of Michigan? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes.
I represent.
And you're not for President Trump. You're not for the tariffs that are going to single-handedly save the American auto industry. Good luck. Good luck getting reelected.
Look, our car prices are going to go up. Domestic cars are going to be more expensive. Foreign cars are going to be more expensive. People won't be able to afford.
A quick little adjustment here for Kari Lake. Mazda just announced that cars that a certain model that they make in the United States, they are ceasing production. These are models that they make in the United States. They ship to Canada. I think it is the Mazda CX-50. Could be wrong on that model number, but they're ceasing production of those temporarily. We don't know exactly how long this is going to go on, but they're ceasing production because of the tariffs, and that's 15% of their sales in Canada. So how Kari Lake thinks, but made in the United States. So how Kari Lake thinks that Trump's tariffs are going to bring jobs back to the automotive industry in the United States, I don't know, because they are cutting jobs right now, it appears.
Buy a car.
The American middle class is going to be bolstered and is going to come back alive, and they're going to be able to afford to buy things. And this is, we talked about this last time around. The American middle class was practically gone when President Trump stepped foot 100 days into the Oval Office. Give him a little bit of a chance here. 100 days is a lot to turn around Joe Biden, who, as I said, destroyed the American economy and continued to destroy manufacturing here.
All right, Cenk.
Yeah. So first of all, the propaganda is getting tiresome. Trump has done a brilliant job. You can't find one thing to criticize him over. And, and Joe Biden had destroyed the economy. It was record low unemployment. So you're being preposterous. No one believes you. Everyone realizes it was the tariffs. They had a perfectly good economy handed to him, and at this point has shattered it to pieces. So I'm getting sick of the propaganda. I'm also getting sick of the, with all due respect, this is idiotic. That's not all due respect. So I'm not sure you have good command of the English language. Okay. All right. Then don't say all due respect. Second of all, you're lecturing people about how to get elected. Kari, let's be honest. Let's be honest, Kari. You and I are not in a position to lecture people on how to get elected. Okay. You haven't won a lot of elections. Neither have I. Okay. So at least I've helped in winning elections. I'm not sure you have. So, and the brother over here in Michigan has actually won an election, but we're conflating two different things. Okay. Number one, we're talking about the polling. Look, Trump's down and hurt. It doesn't matter how much you guys spin it. We're going to have that play out. But that's not related to impeachment. Whether he's popular or not has nothing to do with impeachment. So I don't even know why the congressman brought that up, to be honest. And I think that this impeachment thing is way too premature. What, are you going to get enough Republicans on board? There's no way you are, right? On the other hand, are there actual good grounds for it? There are. You're just not going to be able to execute it. The grounds for impeachment are doing things that are illegal or unconstitutional. Has he subverted the will of Congress? Many, many times. They appropriated money, he refuses to spend it. Or he's spending money that they didn't appropriate. Or he's taking powers like the power to tariff that Congress has, or the power to declare war that Congress has. I know that last one every president abuses. But we have massive violations of the Constitution here. The Supreme Court says bring this guy back, Abrego Garcia. Not only that, there was a clear do not deport order, and he violates that order and then admits that it was a mistake, and he still won't bring him back. The problem there isn't immigration, it's due process, which is the cornerstone of Western civilization.
But Cenk,
and Tim and others, look, we can go back and blame others.
Okay, but look, Michelle Obama piped up about this immigration stuff on X, and I replied to her, and my replies had gazillions of retweets, because all I said was, as far as I'm aware, her own husband deported over 3 million people in 8 years. And no
Okay.
one can persuade me that all of those were done with perfect due process, right? But I don't remember anything like the cacophony of outrage from the left when that was going down. And Obama, I've said this before many times, he was the deporter in chief, was his nickname in Mexico. He couldn't get people out of the country fast enough.
Yeah.
Why was it fine for Obama? And why do liberals just try and pretend that never happened? And why is it so evil when Trump throws out a lot of people that I would imagine most Americans totally agree with? Yes, there are some. Garcia may well be one or not. We don't really know yet whether he was in this gang or not. If he was, then he deserves to be in the El Salvador hellhole. If he isn't and he's innocent, he deserves to come back. But let's not pretend that most of the people that Trump is kicking out were not on the deportation list already and probably deserve to be thrown out.
Yeah. So, Piers, the beautiful thing about me is that I'm consistent on all these things. So when Obama did that, I criticized them. And in fact, when Obama killed Anwar al-Awlaki without due process, I was all over him. That was outrageous. It was and arguably worse than anything Trump has done. And that's where mainstream media loses all their credibility and Democratic politicians lose their credibility when they're not even-handed. So that was totally unacceptable. But that doesn't make what Trump is doing acceptable. And Trump has he gone further than Obama in terms of turning people back at the border? When you turn people back at the border, as Trump is doing now and Obama did, that is not unconstitutional. But has he gone further? Yes. Did Obama ignore court orders? No. Did he say we should send American citizens to a foreign country like El Salvador? No. Did Obama say that he'd run for a third term, which is deeply unconstitutional? No. Did Obama kidnap people off the streets of America for criticizing Israel and arrest and deport them? No.
All right. Well, hang on. Let me add some.
By the way,
hang on. Let me
finish the thought. There's tons of right wingers who agree with me. Tucker Carlson agrees. Candace Owens agrees.
Let me add some.
Joe Rogan agrees.
All right. Hang on. Let me add some things to your list. Did Obama campaign in 08-09 on a ticket of closing Guantanamo Bay because it was an illegal torture chamber? And
Piers Morgan always throws this stuff out. I've seen him do this on multiple shows. Well, what about Obama? He deported lots of people as a gotcha thing. And like Cenk Uygur is saying, and no matter what you think about Cenk Uygur, if you think he's moved too far to the right or whatever, I was listening to the Young Turks and watching the Young Turks during the Obama administration, and what Cenk Uygur is saying is right. He and many other people who are on the left or progressives or Democrats, whatever term you want to use, were critical. I'm not talking about just the Democratic Party establishment people, but people actually on the left were critical of Obama and many of the practices with deportation and immigration. But like Cenk Uygur is saying to Piers Morgan here, these pale in comparison to what Donald Trump and Donald Trump's administration are doing. They were not sending people to El Salvador to concentration camps and ignoring court orders and defying the courts. So they're definitely very different. Now, are you going to hear that from Kari Lake and Tim Pool and other right-wingers who go on Piers Morgan's show? I'm going to say no.
And he was a lawyer? Yes. Is it still open? Yes. Did he deport more people pro rata than any president in history? Yes. Did he drop more bombs in a calendar year outside of World War II than America's ever dropped in a year ever? Yes. Did he run illegal drone programs that killed innocent people at weddings? Yes. In other words, there are lots of things on Obama's watch. Right. So my point is, you've got to look at these things in totality. If I was in America, which I'm not, but I'm a proud, visa holder, and I have a home in America, I look at the success on the southern border as absolutely stunning. And yet the amount of coverage that's getting is almost nothing. And it says to me that the media remains... But
whose fault is that, Piers?
Well, it's the mainstream... to me, it's the mainstream media. Let me bring in Batya here. Batya, it seems to me that the mainstream media...
No, hold on. You asked me a question. Let me answer it real quick, Piers. So, look, in terms of the criticism of mainstream media that's hypocritical, I just pointed it out. But it's not mainstream media that did this. Trump, if he had just focused on closing the border, right now might be at 55% approval rating or really high. I mentioned that right in the beginning. But instead, he bungled it because he's a serial bungler. And he keeps testing the limits of his power because he's authoritarian by nature. He didn't have to do those 4 or 5 unconstitutional things that I just listed. He did it on purpose. He's the one punching himself in the face. So don't blame media for that. That was all Trump.
All right, except that Batya, what I would say is, all right, well,
That's the propaganda. Cenk's
Tim, I
got
will
the
come to you in a moment.
propaganda.
Let Batya just respond to that first.
Well, all of these marginal cases, when you actually look into them, turn out to be not so marginal. You know, Kilmar Garcia did not have an order not to deport him. He had an order not to deport him to El Salvador. So they sent him to the wrong country. But this person is a wife beater and a gangbanger and a human trafficker. He should have been deported to another country. We were let down as Americans because he got a lot of due process and they just didn't follow through because the immigration courts are deeply flawed. You look at these people who were picked up for supposedly criticizing Israel. They both, the two that are, in the news a lot, belong to a group called Columbia University Apartheid Divest, which put out literature 100% supporting Hamas and the October 7th attack. That is a violation of a green card. We would never have given somebody a visa who said, I'm going to belong to a group that's going to put out literature in support of Hamas. The two children who allegedly are American citizens who were deported, they were not deported. Their mothers were deported, and because their mothers are not sociopaths, they chose to take their children with them rather than calling up and finding someone else to take their 2-year-old children. So all of these supposedly liminal cases are actually nothing of the sort. There has been no constitutional crisis. This congressman seems to think that having bad polling numbers is an impeachable offense, is somehow a high crime and misdemeanor. It is utterly laughable, and it's because the Democrats have no agenda. Donald Trump is running to the left of them on economics and to the left of them on fighting wars and being anti-war and trying to get us out of different things and trying to settle wars. And he is a social...
They're to the left of the Democrats. Now, I have plenty of criticism of the Democratic Party, but she's saying this thing of the Trump administration is anti-war. Pete Hegseth, this was after this was recorded. This was recorded yesterday. Just this morning I saw this. I don't know when the tweet was exactly. But Pete Hegseth was threatening Iran, that we might attack Iran. Anti-war, right?
Moderate, he's not even conservative. There is not a single value that the Democrats hold that they are not willing to immediately abandon if Donald Trump starts to defend it. It was the Democrats who thought that we had to control the border to protect working class wages. And now all you see is Democrats out there demanding free trade and demanding more access to China. You see Democrats literally sharing Chinese propaganda because it's against Trump. They have chosen China over their own working class voters. And Congressman, I'm sorry, but the UAW and the Teamsters have both endorsed the tariffs. You're in a lot of trouble in Michigan.
Yeah, well, look, auto factories are being closed. Auto workers are losing jobs. Look, the unconstitutional things. This president tried to the pump and dump scheme. Remember the memes that he profited from? Personally profited from. Remember that the freedom of speech, the lawyers who had fought against him, he intimidated those and then.
But what about but Congressman, what about the sustained lawfare that was waged against Trump by the left?
Okay, I'm going to stop here because this is how these Piers Morgan conversations always go. They always just devolve into people throwing out their various quote-unquote facts, which in a lot of cases are opinions. The congressman is exactly right. And what Batya Ungar-Sargon is saying here, that the Democrats are siding with China. No, it's siding with not having empty store shelves, which is what we're potentially facing here this summer if Trump's tariffs continue. Now, I imagine Trump is going to cave sometime before then, and then he's going to try to claim victory, which it won't be a victory. But as far as impeachable offenses that the congressman is talking about here, Cenk Uygur is right. These aren't going to go anywhere. But, the congressman brings up the pump and dump. These meme coins and other pump and dump type things that Trump's people are doing and he is doing, those are getting so little coverage. And this is one of the most egregious things that any president has done, but he's going to totally get away with that. And in terms of Batya Ungar-Sargon talking about being in a gang and human trafficking and all of that, none of that has been proven. And you can't believe anything that's coming out of this administration. I mean, that's just obvious. So clearly, unconstitutional things are happening there in terms of immigration, where the Trump administration is openly defying courts and judges. So Cenk Uygur is exactly right about this. All you're going to get is spin and propaganda from Tim Pool and Kari Lake and the rest of the right-wingers that go on Piers Morgan's show. But let me know what you think about all of this. Do you agree with Cenk Uygur and the congressman here? I don't want to continue butchering his name. Or are you on the side of Kari Lake and Tim Pool and Batya Ungar-Sargon? Let me know in the comments what you think. Make sure to give me a like and subscribe. I'm Chris on Culture, and I will see you in the next video.